Um, in 2005, I joined the company in their Jeddah office. This was, as I was told, I was perhaps the first Bahraini to join that particular office. And while this wasn't my first overseas experience, it certainly felt very different. And I really hadn't experienced anything like that. It was really culturally different. And it's safe to say today, after all those years working in different companies, I had a cultural shock, but a positive one. If I compare it to my former work experience, if I compare it to my experience with people from Saudi Arabia, Eastern Province, I can tell you that I don't know what was in the weather, whether it was Jeddah, whether it was something else, but Jeddah was truly different. The HR manager that completed my hiring process personally took me for apartment viewings in the first 10 days of my arrival to Jeddah. In the first month, I was invited to 4 or 5 different individual homes to break bread with them. And these were my colleagues, in many cases as new hires, even competitors, for the next higher up in the organization. But that was not the only thing that happened to me. At the end of the month, my manager came to my desk and dropped what looked like a ticket printout and said, Ramzi, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. And this is really for a team building activity. So what we will be doing there is a combination of assessing your competitive skills. We will improve your analytical skills as a team, build on a multifunctional teamwork, but also some of you will experience new skills and talents. I have to say, this wasn't something I was expecting, certainly not in the first month in the job. So for me to go overseas and to see the individuals and the company that I joined doing something like that was really amazing. And I said, I think I struck gold by joining this company. And what happened after that is that I really was excited about that experience of trying scuba diving for the first time. But to be honest, and I think if the right term serves me, I discovered that that was not my cup of tea. And these 2 gentlemen you see in the picture, Salman and Abdullah, said that once we go back to Jeddah, we're going to go and get certified. Oh, I forgot to mention, the experience dive we did was without getting the PADI open water license, but it's something they did in Sharm el-Sheikh. Instructor was with you. So from a safety point of view, although if I think about it now, it was a little bit questionable, it was fine. But again, it wasn't something I wanted. But Salman and Abdullah insisted that I join them. One, because they wanted to make sure I am comfortable being, hosted, in out of work activities, because that's not all you do when you relocate to a new country. And I did. I accepted the challenge. 10 weeks later, we got an open water PADI license. We reached the 18-meter or 60 feet depth. And this is really for those that have experience in PADI or in scuba diving, they know this is really a big milestone. And it was a very proud moment for myself. So the reason I'm sharing this is because this was a story about impact and the actions individuals did from the very first day I arrived till the company's approach of handling employees and being an inclusive one, irrespective of seniority. It doesn't have to be that I had completed my probation period to be eligible to join them on the offsite team. And by the way, this was an annual offsite team, so the timing of me joining was just coincidental and just right. But I want to also bring that you could, with small actions, make a lasting impact. And this was back in 2005. Abdullah and Salman are still my friends until this very moment. And if you're wondering where Abdullah is, he also made it out of this final dive, and he's in the photo at the end. So I want to learn about now some of the participants with us today And I prepared a small question. It's actually a word cloud. For this to work, actually, everyone needs to scan the QR code and enter one word, just for me to know what is the area of their interest, their study, and their work. I'm going to give this a few moments, a few seconds rather. So if you can kindly just either scan the code or type in slido.com and plug in the number that you see on the screen, I will be able to see your results and your actions. So let's give it a moment. So if I see how many participants are in the call, we should have at least few answers to go with. Yeah. By the way, it could be what you're studying. I think at the beginning of the call there was someone from the business school, so you can just type business. There was you have a professor also joining the call. So if you're already working, kindly also just mention the industry that you're in. I just want to have a feeling in order to guide the discussion as we go forward in a way that really captures everyone in the call. And by the way, you don't have to close your phone as we have two more questions or two more polls that will appear automatically on your phone or on your laptop screen or whatever screen you're using that will capture this. So I see, do you see how this is working? So the more there are similar words, the bigger the bubble. This is the word cloud feature on Slido. I encourage you to use it should you feel you want it for your other presentations. I'm going to move on to the next question, just to also learn a little bit more about who's here. And the next question is really what is the biggest challenge facing us today that you're actually interested in being part of the solution? So think about it either from a personal point of view, whether you are in a company that is addressing a certain problem, or someone that is a family member or a friend that you'd like to help. But think about it as a problem that you want to be part of the solution. Yeah, I see exactly. I see comments coming up. It could be a big problem. It could be a small problem. I've seen in the past world hunger to be something that appeared. By all means, make that a challenge you'd like to or you're interested in solving, but also make it very specific to yourself should you feel. So I see time growing, the time box is growing, and yeah, make it as diverse as you want. And I want to park the answers of these questions for a later stage in the presentation. Okay, let's go to the last one. And this is more towards the enterprises today that are out there, from your experience, that contribute to the growth, the wealth, as well as the advancement of any society. Think of anything you've come across from the moment you are at home all the way till your professional life. So any kind of organization, congregation, groups of people that gather together with the objective of contributing towards growth, the growth and the wealth and the advancement of society. Like even your basically the capacity you're in today or the organization you are part of today. Yeah, I say community, government, absolutely. Youth councils, absolutely. These questions will remain live, so if you didn't have a chance to answer them now, they will come up. They are available for the next few days, so feel free to add them because I really use them for my research. And from the research I've conducted in the past, the answers that are skewed by collecting all of the information, and remember that bigger the size of the font, the more prevalent the answers collected, is that you have two distinct types of organizations that come up that are responsible for the advancement of society. Either a very financially driven organization that has the objective of growing wealth for the shareholders and stakeholders, or on the other extreme or the other side of the spectrum, you have companies that are willing to make an impact. Think about nonprofit organizations such as some academic institutions, United Nations, as well as charities and in many cases, governments as well that do not have profit centers have one purpose only, is to really have an impact on society. I'd like to also think about these companies that you have inputted as a spectrum. So on one hand, you have the financial only driven organizations. And on the other hand, you have impact only driven organizations. But the interesting thing is that this spectrum has a lot of movement, hopefully from left to right, because as you become closer and closer towards impact, you will see companies moving from responsible companies, sustainable companies, and impactful companies, and these have different features. For example, I'm not gonna list them all, but I will leave them on the screen for you to have a look. From delivering competitive financial returns, and these are mainly financial institutions, general partners that are raising funds for a specific business, all the way towards impact investing, and this is in I would say the first two blocks of the impact, where you have companies that are addressing social challenges that generate competitive financial returns, not instead of financial return, but in addition to financial returns. And of course, we still have the charities where they have an important role to serve in society. I've also left the source of these information in most of the slides, so you can always refer back to them should you need to. Right, let's move on. Does anyone know who this individual is? Please feel free to throw a comment in the chat if you know. I'm going to have a look as we go on. So there's actually more than one person. How about this? How about her? Does anyone know her? Give it a few seconds. And him? Okay, then that's good, because that means the rest of my slides will be will have some value for most of the attendees. Right, who likes pies? Just a yes or no in the chat will be okay. I know you guys are interactive, so you've already okay. Good. Anyone else? Okay. Companies that operate in certain societies view the value created as a piece of pie. So that pie is split between what the businesses and the shareholders are generating or gathering, as well as what the society is getting out of allowing that business to operate in their society. So what happens is that this becomes really a fight. Sorry, this really becomes a fight for how big a slice of the pie am I getting. But then there is other businesses that view it a little bit differently. And instead of sharing or taking a bigger slice of the pie, they actually grow the pie. And by growing the pie, both the businesses and society in the long term benefit from this engagement. And as per the author of the book by the same title, Grow the Pie, Professor Alex Edmonds, Professor of Finance at the London Business School, he calls it that you either have a pie splitting mentality or a pie growing mentality. But let's hear a little bit more from Professor Alex himself.
Why do businesses exist? To earn profit or serve a purpose? It's not an either-or choice. Companies can achieve both. Serving wider society is particularly urgent today because the magnitude of social problems has grown. People believe that the current system of capitalism is not working for ordinary people. We have this view that purpose and profit are in opposition to each other. This is what I call the pie splitting mentality, that the value that business creates is a fixed pie, so anything given to society is at the expense of shareholders. When you think about some of the most successful management innovations, one example being the assembly line, those have been to try to extract as much as possible from society to give it to shareholders. It's important to note that the pie splitting mentality is sometimes practiced from the other angle. So those who believe in serving wider society think that the only way to increase society's share of the pie is by reducing investors' share. But that's also problematic because investors are not nameless, faceless people. Investors are not them, they are us. They include pension funds and citizens saving for retirement. So it's critical for business to serve social problems, but also to do so in a profitable way that also generates returns to investors, which include us. So what my book emphasizes is the pie growing mentality, the idea that you can create more value for society, but also be more profitable as a byproduct. You might think that the pie growing mentality is pie in the sky. It's just too good to be true. What I present is rigorous evidence showing that companies that deliver more value to wider society are also more profitable in the long term.
Professor Alex is not alone. There is many others that also believe, like Professor George Serafeim from the Harvard Business School, and he recently published a book called Purpose Plus Profit: How Businesses Can Lift Up the World. There's also another book called Impact by Sir Ronald Cohen. Sir Ronald Cohen is the chairperson of the G8 UK, the G8 UK presidency back in 2013 on the Social Impact Investment Forum. And also closer to home, we have Ibrahim Az-Zu'bi, Chief Sustainability Officer at Majid Al Futtaim. And Majid Al Futtaim is actually one of the biggest family-owned businesses in the region, and I believe they are also strongly present here in Bahrain. So where do we begin? And I think this is the question you already answered. This second question I asked you is that you have a problem that is dear to your heart, and you would like to be part of the solution. It could be anything as small as something to do with your soft skills. I saw a lot of comments about time and perhaps time management. But it could be also on a larger scale that addresses global problems, and you'd like to be part of the solution. No one is asking any individual to do the whole weightlifting on their own, but at least think about what problems you'd like to solve in order to be part of the solution. And if you haven't found that answer yet, don't be afraid that the heavy lifting has already been taken. And I think everyone might recognize former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and his 17 United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. So the other question that comes after this is, how do I measure impact? If there's anyone in the call from the accounting or finance team, they are familiar with measuring financial returns using the General Accepted Accounting Principles GAAP, US GAAP, or the International Finance Reporting Standards. But when it comes to non-financial metrics and how particular organizations are impacting the people and the planet, this becomes a very difficult question to answer. And the question goes or transcends beyond just business. You have students in universities trying to think about the major they're interested in studying. You have graduates that are looking for employment, and should they have a choice between a company that delivers social good or environmental benefits, how would they assess which one to be part of? But even casual investors, when they pick up stock and want to invest in them, some of them have a request or requirement to do beyond financial return. And this problem goes also to international or institutional investors when confronted with two similar investment opportunities. The good news is that there are many that have invested time and efforts over the years to try to solving this problem and create standards or matrices that can enable individuals, organizations, and other entities to learn. Can I kindly ask you one more time in the chat to just drop a name of any of those standards or companies you have come across? And by all means, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many that I did not capture here. But I just wanted to give a flavor of the widely adopted ones, the ones that have higher user bases that have seen a lot of traction over the years. I'll give it a moment for anyone that would like to add before moving to the next part. So this is also a good segue. This is also a good segue to my next comment. I gave you earlier an example about personal experience with people that made a lasting impact on my life. But now let's talk about more institutional type of impact. And since we're starting with the GRI or with companies that measure impact, I see Yasmin mentioning ISO. Absolutely, ISO is another standard setting organization that comes to measuring beyond financial returns. But I encourage you to look into these. So let's go to the first example, the GRI. So the GRI is called the Global Reporting Initiative. The next time you go on any website of a company here in Bahrain, I'd like you to try to see if they have a sustainability annual report or an ESG annual report. And you will be surprised at how few companies, not necessarily in Bahrain, but globally, how few companies are able to report those non-financial matrices. But I want you to see what kind of standards have they adopted. And chances are it is the GRI. Because because the GRI is actually one of the oldest ones that is about 25 years, completed 25 years in September. They serve more than 10,000 organizations, and up to 70% of Fortune 500 companies use or refer to the GRI. So they are, by all means, the most widely adopted standard setting organization for non-financial matrices. They also integrate all 17 United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. But the important one I want to highlight is that they have a stringent governance structure, and they have an independent global sustainability standard board that are not employees of the GRI, but rather experts in their fields that work on setting those matrices, and they have a global representation from different industries, geographies, and stages of developing countries, developed countries, and even emerging markets. They themselves are also focusing on 2 of the SDGs, and this is actually my mapping. An exercise the University of Bahrain Business Incubator Center has also done. So thank you, Dr. Isra, and it is on their website. And I believe there is a session at 5 o'clock right after this, also by the College of Business Administration about ESG and the importance for those interested in the topic. If anyone has the link of that session, please feel free to drop it in the chat box, or I can do that after at the end of those slides. I want to move on to another example from the corporate world. So we talked about an example from a nonprofit. Let's go to an example from a for-profit organization. This time it is Bridges Fund Manager or Fund Management. Bridges is an impact investor that has raised over £1 billion since its inception. They are an impact-driven. They have an impact-driven investment thesis, which means that their decisions in terms of companies they invest in and problems they would like to solve goes beyond financial metrics. But don't underestimate that is a component of the investment strategy. It cannot be on the expense of financial returns, but it is in addition to them. It is also founded by the chair of the UK presidency of the G8, of the Global Investment Impact Task Force, Sir Ronald Cohen, that we talked about earlier in his book. They also are the pioneers in Europe about the social impact bonds funding instrument. And if anyone is familiar with the social impact bonds, please, I'd like to see if that has transcended to this part of the world in the chat. Just drop me a comment, and I'd like, if you're interested, I'd be more than happy to share more about this financing tool. Bridges Fund Management articulate exactly the 5 SDGs they are interested in solving, and it is on their website at the moment. Let's go to the last segment I'd like to bring up, and it is government. So can a government make a positive impact? And I want to pick up the example of the UAE Ministry of Economy. And think about what their mandate would be for a Ministry of Economy and what this example is doing. Because they have partnered with fintech platforms, Capital.com and Currency.com, to launch the Next Gen Talent virtual conference happening tomorrow. So if you are interested in learning more about it, excuse me, I suggest you go to their website, nextgentalent.localized.world, and register just to get exposed to Web3, to get access to Web3 leaders, learn about the Industrial Revolution, Fourth Revolution, and more about what the next generation talent require, and how the United Arab Emirates is using this time and the time left to equip their nation and be prepared for what is yet to come. And again, I've mapped out the 4 different SDGs that the ministry is embarking on, but also they are trying to support. But that cannot be possible without an ecosystem that can cater for this kind of dialogue. And the role of bringing people together is not a new idea. Bringing people together to make a positive change. This is Alfred Nobel. You might know him as the individual that endowed his fortune to what is known today as the Nobel Prize. This is one of the ultimate awards that distinguishes pioneers that had the greatest benefit to humankind, and it's been running for over 100 years. You don't have to go too far to be part of ecosystems, as we have a lot of local ecosystems that you can find and join and be part of. And this is just a list of the ones I have experience with and I'm aware of, but there's many of them. There are also many regional ecosystem developers that I encourage you to explore and look into. And then there are global ones that have done multiple efforts to try solve specific problems in their own capacity with their own network. So having access to them, actually just knowing about their existence is already a very good step. So I encourage you to investigate more and perhaps start with the ones you see here. You're already here at this webinar, so that shows that you have interest in learning more about how the ecosystem can enable people to solve problems and generate financial but also non-financial returns. I want to just go back to the example I shared here, Zayed Sustainability Prize, and tell you that actually you have someone not so far from here that contributed to this and actually was a winner in this prize back in 2018. Let's have a look together.
مدرسة بيان البحرين النموذجية من أهم أهدافها هو صنع وتحفيز قادة المستقبل، وبالأخص مبادرات الاستدامة وتطبيقات الطاقات الخضراء.
In regards to climate change, Bahrain, which is an island, in the future could be completely submerged with water. And as the youth, we should be the ones taking the step for climate change, because we need to envision a future for the coming generations. And thus, we've been working on implementing sustainability and taking a step further.
If we were to win the Sheikh Zayed Future Energy Prize, we'd like to add more solar panels and wind turbines, and we'd like to implement a grey water recycling system.
إن هذه الجائزة تحمل اسم غالي على قلوبنا جميعا، ألا وهو الراحل سمو الشيخ زايد رحمه الله، الذي يصادف هذا العام الذكرى المئوية لميلاد هذا القائد، مصدر إلهام واعتزاز وأسلوب حياة يؤمن به القادة والشعب وتتناقله الأجيال إن شاء الله.
Can I just check if the audio was working and anyone had challenges hearing? Because everyone okay?
Working.
Fantastic. So this is a school in Bahrain. They won the high school challenge back in 2018, and they were one of the many participants. And this is a global event. So I encourage you to visit their website and look into this time businesses as if you are not in high school and attending this call, then you are qualified to participate in the businesses and the ventures in the different or 5 categories they have. So I want to leave you with a final thought before we move on to the Q&A session, is that 80%, and I like this quote, 80% of success is actually showing up. So by attending and engaging in different events that are related to the cause and the problem and the interest you had that you mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, and by joining any organizations that are local or international, then you will have access to more resources, network of like-minded people, and the opportunities will be far more than just keeping the idea within the borders of your classroom or your home or your social network. And I want to share with you some of the things I tried to do over the years to try to engage. So this is one way I was doing it. It doesn't have to be a big initiative. This is an awareness campaign, employee engagement campaign I launched back in 2010, specifically on road safety. We brought people together from we brought employees and their families together and made a wall of, we made a pledge that we will be becoming more responsible drivers. But this initiative was not out of context. It was because both Saudi Arabia and the UAE had one of the highest accident rates in the world during the 2008 to 2009 period. In fact, in Saudi Arabia, you had 1 accident every 10 seconds registered globally. And this was a catastrophic number. And this company had presence in both Saudi and UAE. And we made this campaign, one, to bring the people together, but at the same time, to trying to address a general societal problem. This is one example. I want to show you another one that was made on a broader scale. This was a social entrepreneurship enablement program in Durban, South Africa. The company I was part of wanted to support local entrepreneurs, at the same time work on the waste management challenge the South Africa had, specifically Durban there. And it worked with an NGO called Wildland, you see in the top left corner. And they had a genius idea of creating wastepreneurs, the waste entrepreneurs. And waste at what, if anyone is interested in waste management or second life, they will know that segregation, collection, and distribution of waste is actually one of the biggest challenges, because often you don't have the infrastructure to enable you to do so. So what Wildlife came and did is that enabled those small villagers to create a second income for many of their residents, help manage the waste in those communities, at the same time contribute towards towards the economy, transparent economy, by banking the unbanked. So this actually served multiple purposes, at the same time addressed a social and environmental problem. The youth is really what we need to invest in. And I think no two can deny the power of enlightening the youth and empowering them at a very young age. And this was a campaign that we had with one of the schools in the UAE to try to bring them closer towards the discussion and the dialogue, because often they are actually change makers at that very young age. By speaking to the parents 3 weeks, 4 weeks after, many of them told us that, the children came home and asked us to separate their waste dispensers to what is recyclable and what is not. So I think by working with them and helping them and enabling them, you are already creating an impact. But you can go bigger and bigger as your responsibilities become wider, as your experience and networks becomes broader. So you can also reach a stage where you are with movers and shakers of the industry and decision makers. And on one hand, the World Government Summit, annual World Government Summit, brings government leaders around the world, and the opportunity to be able to address them with ideas and suggestions was really a highlight of my career. And on the right-hand side, hosting the UAE Final Entrepreneurship World Cup. I think each nation had a finalist joining them. Was also a fantastic opportunity to engage, rub shoulders also with people of decision makers, but also with authority to enable change and positive change in society. I think the next level will be really to escalate and start becoming a thought leader. And this is a webinar and a podcast I launched back in 2020. You know, everyone was stuck at home. COVID pandemic really crippled our movement, but we still had problems to address. And one of the things I had few suggest and help me launch was this podcast, Change Their Odds, that enabled me to engage with different people from different walks of life, leaders trailblazing to make a positive impact on society, both on the people and the planet. And it also allowed me to engage with interesting people. I want to pick one particular one, which is Paul Heslop. He was he is rather the program planning and management director at United Nations Mass Mine Operations. These are the groups responsible for dismantling the mines or explosives around the world as remnants of war. And this is the one picture he had in the previous company with the late Princess Diana from the United Kingdom. So I think the point I'm trying to make is try to be there, be present, and start small, because things can trigger and discussions can grow based on the interactions you have. And the last point I'd like to make is, and this is what we are doing at the moment, is impact venture building. And this is a business we started. I'm a co-founder of a mental health technology startup that we launched last year with the support of the Hope Fund in Bahrain. It is a mental health platform catering women's mental health need during their motherhood journey, from the moment she is trying to conceive all the way till postpartum or after childbirth. Maternally had a lot of traction and interest from the news. And back a couple of weeks ago at GITEX, we launched our MVP, and we're testing it between now and the end of the year. So do we remember the photos I shared earlier? I just want to go back quickly to the chat and see if anyone had mentioned anything before I do the reveal. I'm hoping not many know. Okay, it seems not many knew who these individuals were. But actually, these were His Excellency, His Excellency Dr. Thani ibn Ahmed Al-Zayudi, Minister of State for Foreign Trade at the Ministry of Economy at the UAE, responsible for the initiative Next Gen Talent that is launching tomorrow. Next, we have Judy Kushevsky. She is the chair of the Global Sustainability Standard Board at the GRI, the independent board that is responsible for setting the standards that will be later adopted by the GRI and later on the companies. She's also the chief executive of Sancroft, a boutique consulting firm in the UK with global operations, helping companies achieve sustainable reporting and disclosure and realigning their organizations to do so. Last but not least, Sir Ronald Cohen. He is the chair of the Global Steering Group of Impact, co-founder of the Bridges Fund Management, as well as the author of Impact, the book we mentioned earlier. Three leaders, pioneers in different capacities, wearing different responsibilities from government to the private sector to the non-profit organization, doing impact, all of which I had the pleasure of interviewing them in different episodes as part of my podcast, Change Their Odds. So with this, I'd like to really thank you for your time, and feel free to have any questions. You can reach out to me now or later. I think you are experts now on LinkedIn and scanning QR codes.